We have with us three consummate event professionals, and I'd like to formally introduce them, and then we'll get into questions, and then we invite you to ask questions as we wrap up today, okay? So first I'd like to introduce Devin Fassberg. Devin is the Director of Sales for the New York Metro area. She has worked with Live Nation for 9 years, starting in the administration and operations side, and transitioning into sales and special events in 2017. Devin has been an MPI member for 5 years and joined the MPI GNY board in 2021 as Director of Networking. She has always had a passion for music and live events and loves working on the venue side in our industry. Welcome, Devin.
Thank you.
And also on the in the roundtable, we have Zachary Tranter. Zachary has been in the event industry for nearly 15 years across various aspects and organizations. He currently works as a team lead for First, dedicated to the Carlyle Group account. He has been a member of MPI for several years. He is an alum of the New York University Tisch Center of Hospitality, yay, and enjoys bringing his dog to the office. All right, good for you. And Ingrid Wigberg. Ingrid Wigberg is a New York City-based event professional. She is an alumna of New York University Tisch Center of Hospitality, another yay, with an MS degree in event management, and is the incoming fundraising director for MPI GNY. No matter what the occasion, nothing makes Ingrid happier than a well-organized, beautifully executed event. So welcome, Ingrid. So let's just get right into the questions because we're probably the only thing between you and a reception. So I'd like to ask the group, please reflect on your time as an event student or young professional. Did you have any fears about networking? And if you did, how did you combat those fears? So Ingrid, I'll ask you to start us off.
Thank you, Ron, for the question. I can definitely speak to this. I wouldn't necessarily say I would had a fear surrounding networking, but I think one thing to keep in mind is smart networking because there's so many networking opportunities all around the city. The events industry is huge, so you really have to be strategic and pick and choose which events you're going to go to. What is your purpose? Are you looking for a new job? Are you looking for a vendor to partner with? Are you looking for education? So really know who you're trying to meet, and that will help you narrow it down. And just because a networking event is free doesn't always mean it's good. And they do add up after a while, the cost. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. But it's an investment, and I think it's always good to make sure that what you're paying for, you're really going to get the most out of it. But as far as the fear, I would say, you know what? It's a conversation. Just approach people. And most of us event professionals are very passionate about what we do. And I know for me personally, if I see an emerging professional or an event student come up to me and ask me questions, I feel great inside, and I would love to, do whatever I can to help them out or point them in the right direction. And I think it's a good way to kind of spread the good word, if that makes any sense. So don't be shy, don't be afraid, and just you're not going to get any opportunities if you don't talk to people. So.
Thank you, Ingrid. Zachary?
Yeah. Unlike Ingrid, I'm very introverted. So I think, again, less of a fear, but more of something to just a challenge to overcome is being an introvert in a relatively extroverted community. When networking, I always found the one other introvert in the room and went up to them. They're usually the person scrolling on their phone in the corner, or I'm usually the person scrolling on my phone in the corner. But going up to them, the other solo person around, and just introducing myself was how I would overcome that fear. And as Ingrid said, it's just a conversation. And it's not intimidating to have a conversation with most people. We're the type of people, especially in this industry, are generally friendly people. We enjoy meeting others. So having that moment of connection is so much easier when you share that kind of personality in common.
Thank you, Zachary. Devin?
Yeah. I'd say I'm thinking back when I was in college, and there was nothing like MPI that I knew that I could be a part of. So I feel like this is already so much more valuable, that especially NYU giving special, student pricing, that if myself and the group that I was with at school, we would have loved to go to MPI events and know that it was a way that we could network and get ourselves out there. And we just didn't have that. So that is
Great. And you are the director of networking,
Yes.
so you'll be working on that for sure.
exactly.
Let's move to another question. Based on survey data, the two most common reasons students have for not attending a network event is one, feeling they don't have enough professional experience, and two, not knowing how to approach a crowd. Using your experience as a student and now as a professional, what would be your recommendations on how to get into networking? Zachary?
Yeah. I think there's a few things here that you have to remember. One is that everyone starts somewhere. And sometimes that somewhere is in school. Sometimes that somewhere is a part-time job, and sometimes that somewhere is a volunteer opportunity. But no matter what level of experience you have, it's always important to know that you still belong in that room, especially in a networking event. If you were invited and you've signed up, you belong there. Doesn't matter if it's your first day in the events industry or your last day in the events industry. It sounded ominous. Nobody's dying.
Wow.
Meaning you've been in the event industry a while and you're there. So I think when I was a student, when I would approach an event, a networking type event where I was there to introduce myself, I would introduce myself as a student. I did have experience. When I went to NYU as my master's degree, I did have experience in the industry, but when I went to the University of Central Florida, I was relatively green. I had minimal experience, but I knew that events was what I wanted to do. So networking events in Orlando, when I went, I would introduce myself as a student, and instead of listing off what I have done, I listed off what I wanted to do. What were my aspirations? Sometimes that really clicked with the person that I was, speaking with, and that was great. And we'd have a conversation. We'd exchange email addresses, LinkedIn's, whatever it may be. Or they might say, "Oh, well, I have a friend in the industry that does just that. Why don't you meet with them? Why don't you talk to them?" So I think it's about approaching it as a student, approaching it as a opportunity to describe what you want to be doing. That is even applicable to some industry professionals and adults that have been in the industry a while but are looking for a change. But especially as a student, I think that's the route to take.
Great advice to let people know what you want to do. You have to make the ask, right?
Right.
Devin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, being a student, no one would expect you to have all the experience in the world. I think just putting yourself out there and letting people know that you want to learn more, you want to meet people, you want to make those connections, I think that's the most important, that's all you can really do. And I feel like that'll help with the fears just by putting yourself out there once you see, the feedback that you get.
Very good. Ingrid?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with everything Devin and Zach just said. And just to piggyback off of that, it brings me back to when I was brand new in the event industry. I was just fresh out of undergrad, although they didn't have an event program in college at that time where I was. And I just did one internship in my last semester. So I was really new and fresh in the industry. And one of the challenges I had, not so much about like being shy and approaching people, but it was more people didn't take me seriously enough. And then you really have to kind of go out of your way to prove yourself and just be very unapologetic about it. But of course, like in an honest and respectful way, that yes, I am a real professional. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And again, going back to know who you're trying to meet. Like, are you trying to get a client out of this? Are you trying to find a new job? Because I had this feeling like, oh, no one really ever gave me a chance, because it was still kind of green. And I didn't have a lot of practical experience behind me. So one way to kind of overcome that, I felt, was just, start talking to people, because you never know who might need an event professional. And you're in this industry because you're passionate about something. And if you agreed to go to a networking event on a Thursday night, instead of Netflixing or hanging out with your other friends or whatever, you're here because you're committed to something and you want it. So that in itself says a lot. And even if you don't find exactly the right person you're looking for, I remember I went to a big festival that was mostly networking. And I was there with the intention of getting clients, but I found one of my first professional mentors ever. And that relationship I will never forget. And because this person really pushed me to really take everything a step further and helped me gain my confidence. And he referred me to one of my first clients. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's good. Great success story. Okay, we'll move on. Based on survey data, I don't know what the survey was, but based on survey data, food and beverage, audiovisual and production, event design, and event technology are, oh, wait a minute, I don't see financial analysis here at all.
Uh-oh.
Well, we'll have to have a discussion about that after class. Anyway, food and beverage, AV and production, event design, and event technology are the top 4 interests of event management students. How would you advise students to network with multiple kinds of professionals? Does it change based on industry interest? Example, is there a certain way to network with someone who works in event technology versus event design?
I mean, yeah, I think our network is well versed, and so it can't hurt to, if you ask one person and it's not their wheelhouse per se, they'll be able to connect you to someone that you can speak with that will be able to help you, because especially our group, like, everyone just wants to help each other in any way they can. So you have to make the ask and at least put yourself in that position. And then if they're not the right person to speak with, then you at least made a connection that you don't know if you'll meet later on in life. And then they can help connect you to someone else that may be able to help you better.
So for instance, approach someone and say, I'm very interested in audiovisual and production, and even though you may not be the right person,
You may know
to
someone.
say, oh, I do know someone who does that, and let me direct you to them, or here's my card, and give me your card, and I'll pass it on. Okay, very good. Ingrid?
Yes, I would say every single aspect you mentioned, including finance analysis,
All right.
is
Thank you,
extremely
Ingrid.
important and crucial to the event production or event planning process. And we all have our own unique talents and abilities, or a certain aspect of the industry that each one of us feels it comes more naturally, or we enjoy doing a little bit more. I personally like the interaction, the interpersonal relations with clients and with other people, and the networking, and I also like the creative end. Whereas the analytical part, I'm not really so confident in my abilities. So you need to talk to those people because you might learn something from them. So I'd say, the approach you use, it may not necessarily be different. Like, just talk to them like you would anyone else. And but I think it's more about asking questions and be like, can you explain this a little bit better? How does this work? How can we help each other? And how do these different moving parts work together to create a beautiful end result? Because that's kind of how you'd approach it. Whereas if you're talking with a like-minded person, it's more about sharing the passion of, whatever you're doing or whatever you're creating or producing. So yeah, don't underestimate any aspect of this business, the technology, the finance, the production and design, all of it. All of it is so crucial and important. And eventually you might become more well-versed, and it makes you, in the end, a more well-rounded, better event planner. And that's what distinguishes the professional from the amateur.
Thank you. Zachary?
Part of what Ingrid said that I want to pull out is that the approach to networking shouldn't be different whether you're speaking to an AV person, a financial analyst, a floral designer, or a project manager. But what you may find is different is the terms and the lingo that these different aspects of the industry use. Despite being one industry under one umbrella, we often deal with things very differently and say different things about the same, widget, for example. And when I was networking, or when I was starting to network in college and in my master's degree, and even today, I think I use the opportunity to meet with someone who's outside of the kind of discipline that I'm in as a chance to broaden my network, some of that I might need later, or might want to be able to call on when I need a financial analyst or whatnot, or look at it as an opportunity to explore something new. If you are looking to broaden your industry knowledge, even with a 15-minute kind of informational interview, that's a really good way to do it, is just finding new people that aren't doing the same thing as you and learning more about what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Very good. Thank you. And if I can add one more thing to put an exclamation point, we're event professionals, so we all go in with a plan, right? So when you come to an event like this, my plan would be, I want to talk to AV professionals. Let me find out who's here from the AV world. And before I leave tonight, I want to make sure I at least touch base with them, get a card, reach out, right? So, if you have a plan, you won't leave empty-handed without reaching out to those people. But everything said here by the folks on the roundtable is absolutely true. Meet everyone you can, learn as much as you can about every aspect of the industry, for sure. Okay, next, what is the most effective networking practice for emerging leaders in the events industry? Okay, is there a good network? I think we shared that in the previous question, but if you want to amplify that a bit.
Sure, I would say a good networking practice, we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but networking etiquette, I think, is something that's very important to keep in mind. When you're talking to someone, at a networking event such as this, and they hand you a business card, like really take a moment to let that sink in, look at the card, at least act as if you're kind of interested, like, okay, this is cool, whatever, and follow up with that person, because I usually like to do the 24-hour rule the next day at a reasonable hour, because if you wait longer than a day, you're gonna forget. But if you do it the second you get home that night, it's a little bit weird. And so, you just gotta say like, hi, it was so lovely to meet you at the such and such event. Hopefully we can connect soon and work together, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's one thing. Following up is crucial. Otherwise, you just wasted 3 hours of your time and you have this stack of business cards, you're never gonna hear from them again. And another thing I feel about the etiquette is, just be mindful of your surrounding, because like if you have a drink in one hand and like your purse is open on the other side and you got like food everywhere, it's just be courteous, just common sense practices.
That's why I check my purse. It's a lot easier.
Of course, yes, yes.
I want to follow on that etiquette road, because I think that's a really important point to touch upon. Everything Ingrid said and more. Presenting yourself in a professional fashion is oftentimes hard for students, and I speak from experience of meeting a lot of students, having presented at NYU classes in the past and been at networking events. You have to come as if you belong. You do belong, but you have to come as if you are prepared and dressed and ready and look as if you belong as well. So things like, depending on the networking event, things like a suit may be appropriate, suit and tie even. Something like today, we were told more of the business casual side, so button down or button up for men or those that wear button ups, perfectly fine and acceptable. ripped jeans, probably not so acceptable. Like shorts, definitely not acceptable unless you're out playing golf. So coming prepared and looking the part also really helps. I would also amplify with the 24-hour rule. There's different ways to follow up with people. Sometimes it's an email because you have their business card. I would restrict email when you have something to share with them, like a PDF attachment, or they said, hey, send me your resume. An email is the best way to do that. If you just connected briefly, you just have their business card, perhaps LinkedIn is the best way. And it could be just a LinkedIn connection or LinkedIn connection with a message, generally more impactful. Or, and in maybe rare instances for us millennials, you would give them a call. Now I know that it's a lot of dread in people, but how many times have you received a phone call and actually picked up and been like, oh, this was a great conversation? For me, all the time, actually, because I don't receive many phone calls and it's kind of shocking and surprising when you do. So if you're really looking to make an impression and you don't find it inappropriate or it doesn't fill you with anxiety and dread, pick up the phone. In a reasonable hour, not that same night, because that would be like a stalker. I would definitely decline the call.
Very good.
I agree with what both of you said. And to tag onto it, like, go to as many events as you can, but then follow the protocol after so that they remember you after you go to the event. So it's like you said, if you're going to follow up, just stay in touch. Like, you want to make it seem like when you're at the event, you're speaking to someone, you're passionate about it, you care, you want to learn more, then following up is, showing that you remember the conversation and care about it and that you didn't have food and drinks all over yourself. And then staying in touch, not that long after, just to say, hey, just checking in, makes them really know that you valued the conversation that you have and that you actually care.
Good point. And I just want to amplify what Zachary said. Today we're talking about confident connections, but being a confident networker makes all the difference in the world. So walk in like you own the place, right? That's very important. Very important. Fake it till you make it. I didn't say that. All right. So now we want to know about your favorite pickup line. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not pickup line. It's go to opening line when you network. So when you approach someone, what's your first question? Is it, hi, nice shoes? Is it, how do you break the ice? How do you get conversations started?
I feel like you can't go wrong with food if you're at a reception, right?
Isn't this wonderful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or isn't this awful?
Yeah.
That probably gets a better reaction, like, what? What are you talking about? All right. Anyone have a go-to line you'd like to share with us?
It varies depending on who I'm talking to, but I think the food is always a good place to start, or commenting on the venue. Isn't this a lovely space? And then you can sort of segue into, so how long have you been a part, or which organization do you belong to if you're at an event like this? And then you can say, oh, I'm with MPI, I'm with HSMAI, whatever. And then you can kind of lead into, so what do you do exactly, and so on and so forth. So.
Okay, anyone else want to share
I like the, this is a lovely venue question, or prompt, because it gets people to kind of pause and sometimes look around. Sometimes you walk into a networking space and from experience, you're so head down, focused on something that you don't take a moment to appreciate where you are. So that's always a good kind of pickup line. I also like to crack a joke. Sometimes I'll go up to people and just crack a joke, but I'm not going to share one today. And also just going up to someone and introducing yourself. Hi, my name is Zachary. I'm a team lead at First, dedicated to the Carlisle group account, is enough. And I think that's a reasonable approach at a networking event. That would be weird on Tinder, but very appropriate at MPI.
But I'm going to protect you from yourself, Zachary, and move on. Devin, do you have any lines you open with?
And I think it also depends on the kind of event and just the vibe. But I have no problems just in going over and introducing myself, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Okay. Okay, well, the committee might get angry about this, but I'm going to go out to the audience for pickup lines because we do have some, sorry, go-to lines. But if you want to share a pickup line that works, do that as well. Does anyone have a line you almost always use when you go to an event like tonight? Do you start with, hi, I'm with whatever company, or do you look at their name badge and go, oh, you're with, or do we have something else like, oh, have you ever thought about going to the Caribbean? Or, anyone have some standards? Yes, sir, in the back.
It's not mine, but the one I hear the most still, because I go to a zillion networking events, and people at times, because you can't always see the badge, and that's kind of weird. Like, am I going to talk to you or not? Where are you from? Who are you with? And
That's
so
good.
you can't go wrong.
Right.
I like to think about like the venue.
If I were to go over to Drew today, I would say happy opening day.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Based on his hat. So it all depends on like sometimes if you like, and that I wouldn't have known before I just saw you in your Yankees hat.
Right. You would say, hey, how are the Yankees doing? Or
Right.
I'm a big fan, even though you may not be. You could start the dialogue, right?
And food in the venue is a great idea.
Right. And these are all non-threatening, right? There's nothing threatening about these questions. Someone else want to share? Yeah, David.
Yeah, I think if, since this is geared towards students, it's okay to say, I'm a student and this is my first time at this event.
Ah, very good.
Because people naturally are inclined to want to help.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
there, it's almost put on the person that you're introducing yourself to, and all of a sudden you'll feel that ice melt. The other thing on the other side of the coin is not to mug people. You don't want to assault them. I've been on both sides of that coin, and it's not comfortable. So you want to make sure that you limit your introduction and that it's not too much, and it's not too little. It's like, the Three Little Bears. You want to suggest rearrangements.
Right.
That's very good, because sometimes you accost someone and you won't leave them, right? Even if someone's trying to edge into the conversation, you disregard that. You have to respect that there are a lot of people.
Post-pandemic personal spaces.
Yeah,
More
good
important.
point.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
My
Yeah.
rule is a 5-minute conversation. If you don't know the person, you're not friends, you're not existing friends, you don't want to spend more than 5 minutes with them. You will. Sometimes you really don't want to spend more than 5 minutes, but you don't want to monopolize their time, is what I'm trying to say. You want to have a quick conversation, get to know each other, exchange business cards, and then move on. And it's not just like an awkward walk away. You can make an excuse, I need to go get another drink, or wave to some random person across the room and just say, oh, my friend's over there.
Oh, and heaven forbid, don't use their company name. Use their first name.
Yes.
Hi, Zachary. Not hi first.
That's fair.
Really?
People go, oh, Visa. They're like, what?
Yeah. Well, like, are you the David I heard about? Let me talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Good advice. Anyone else like to share? Okay. All right. So now we're going to ask you for some historic experiences. So if you could provide us with real stories of how you overcame networking fears and some actual networking tips that can be used by professionals so students can network effectively today at Global Meetings Industry Day. So maybe share a story about how you got through, maybe your first awkward networking or how you network, and some tips you can leave students with today to get the most out of this evening's opportunity.
Oh, wow. I was trying to think. I only have to share one. I'm trying to think of a good example.
Share one for me.
You want me to come back to
Yeah,
you?
come back to me while
We'll
I
come back to you.
contemplate. Yeah.
Zachary, may we start with you?
Oh, sure. So what I'm hearing from the question is you want some actionable things that we can do, that you can implement today in the next few hours.
Right. After you tell us about a crash and burn or a successful story.
I was trying
I'm
to
not
dodge
letting you out.
that.
I'm not letting, no, you're not getting past that.
I'll give a success story. I was at, I want to say it was the Rainbow Room near here, Rockefeller Center, and it was some like hotel road show event. So tons of hotels around the room with little high top tables. I had my goal that evening, or my kind of plan that evening, was to seek out 3 of the hotels that I was speaking to at the moment for a program sometime in the future, and 3 more. The 3 hotels that I was speaking to were easy because I knew the people. And I went to say hi and introduce myself. It's the first time I was meeting many of them in person. The 3 additional hotels were the hardest part. So my success story, I guess, was strategically finding 3 people around the room that looked like they were lonely and going up to them and introducing myself. And I said, hi, my name is Zachary. I work for whatever the company was at the time. And I'm interested in learning more about your hotel. And that prompted a lot of excitement in all 3 of these people. Of course, they were there to sell their hotel, but I don't think they were used to being approached so positive, I don't want to say positively, but so enthusiastically by someone who was relatively young in the industry. This was 8 to 10 years ago. So,
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And now you can give us your tips and advice.
Now I'll give the actionable tips. I think, much like what we spoke about earlier, find that starting line, that pickup line that you want. And I think you have a bit of an advantage because you all came about an hour earlier than everyone else is coming. So you can look around the room and find one exciting thing to say to people. Or just think about your 2-sentence elevator pitch. I know when I went to college, there was a lot of talk about your elevator pitch, your 1 minute, your 90-second, how do you introduce yourself? Condense that in the next hour, condense that in your mind to 2 sentences and commit it to memory, and use that 3 times tonight.
Very good. Good advice. Devin, I'll give you another minute, Ingrid. We'll come to Devin.
I mean, I'd say as a director of networking, every time I make a new connection or find a new venue, or like, that's a success for me because I was able to make a deep enough connection with someone that they're willing to host MPI for a big event, and that's the whole goal of what I'm trying to do. So that I don't take lightly, and that's leading to everyone just putting yourselves out there as much as you can, because you never know who you're going to meet at a given event, and you may not think it's anything that night, and then a year later, 2 years later, you can run into that person. And I'd say first impressions are definitely, people remember them. So,
but I'm not letting you get out of telling us your first crash and burn or success story.
I mean, I'm very outgoing and personable, so I don't.
So they're all success stories then.
If someone has a negative story about me, come tell me. I want to know.
That Devin.
Now, we do have a file. We did get a file. We'll share it with you. Ingrid?
Okay, yes, I do have a story. I wouldn't say this specifically is a success story, but it's an example of what not to do and what I've learned from that experience and how to go about it ever since. Again, I was brand new to the industry, only within a couple of years working events, and I was volunteering at an industry function. I think I was greeting or giving out name tags or, picking them up at the door, like as people were leaving, something like that. So there was a lot of opportunity to talk with people and get their names. So there was this one woman, and she started asking a lot of questions, and she seemed to be very critical, like she was grilling me, like, oh my God, like, is this an interrogation? But she was very serious about these questions, asking what I did, how do I operate based on this, how this and that and the other. And then she asked a question about pricing, and I just made up a number, and I'm just like, and she kind of caught me in the act. She's like, oh, there's no way in New York City that this and that would cost this much. I mean, where do you find this? And I was sort of stuck. And that's when I said, okay, well, from now on, we just got to be honest with people. And the fake it till you make it, in theory, that's a good idea. But what I like to say is believe it until you become it. And it's okay to say, listen, I'm new to the industry, or I'm just getting started, or I'm new to this area, new to this city, I'm not really sure, blah, blah, blah. or you could just say like I'm looking for work. Like there is nothing wrong with saying any of those things, but do not make up a story because you will be found out. And it was extremely awkward, but she kind of had this sense of compassion, like, because it seems like she might have been there before too, once upon a time. And she's like, no, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just like, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to get a better idea of, this, that, and the other. And she sort of left the door open to where like, okay, maybe we could partner up or work together. So it wasn't a complete failure, but needless to say, it was very embarrassing. So that's an example of overcoming a hurdle. It was my fault though.
And
so.
tips? Do you have any tips different from what we heard?
Different from what we've already heard. I would have to agree with everything that's already been said.
Right.
And yeah, just I would say be honest,
Well, I like believe it till you become it. That's
believe it till you become it. Yeah.
Well, now we're going to turn to all of you in the audience, or as I would say in class, it's your turn to talk. So do we have any questions for our roundtable guests or any comments you'd like to make that students in the room may take advantage of? Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to point out, I know for the MPI networking events, a lot of them try to do your research in advance. If there's certain people that you know, most of the time once you register, it will send out a link of see who's coming. So do your research in advance, find out if there's people that you really want to meet up with, and then seek them out. Because number one, it'll calm your nerves because you have a mission. And number two, you know who you're going to run into.
Excellent advice. And since this is a networking event, your naming.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Laura Mulholland. I am the Media Past President of MPI, and I work for Live Nation.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. That's good advice. Any other advice or questions for our students? Someone must have a question. We have these professionals here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Becca Pickett. I'm a freelance show caller, and I was wondering if you track who you've networked with and how you do that. I'm a spreadsheet fan. I literally have a spreadsheet, and I was just wondering if anyone had.
It's a good question.
Excellent question. So why don't we start, Ingrid?
I don't necessarily have a method per se, but I feel like if you go to enough of these events, you kind of see the same people, and little by little you recognize faces and names and who they work for. And I just kind of go by memory or go based on a very unique characteristic about that person, and that's how I remember them. And but the spreadsheet is an excellent idea because sometimes things can definitely get lost in the shuffle, and it's hard to remember every single person you come across. So thank you for the suggestion. I like it.
Anyone, Zachary, would you like to?
I used to have a spreadsheet, and then I kind of gave up on it because tools like LinkedIn made it easy enough to kind of keep the same information without having to duplicate it out in a spreadsheet. But love the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Love that the show caller is like, I have a spreadsheet, because of course the show caller has a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use LinkedIn kind of as that tool. And there's different ways you can flex LinkedIn, especially if you have like a LinkedIn, what is it called? LinkedIn Plus subscription, which I know isn't for everyone and it does cost money, but there's different ways that you can, even without that, utilize LinkedIn to see who's in your network, and in particular businesses or particular locations, and just through a simple search feature. So that's what I use often. I'm like, similar to Ingrid, I'm like, who did I speak to? Where did they work? Or where did they say they lived? Or what's the first letter of their mother's last name? And put that in LinkedIn search and it'll pop up something.
Fantastic. Devin, do you have any?
We use a program at work that inputs the information, and you can export it to an Excel spreadsheet, but where you could just put in the search field either the name or the company of the person that you're looking for, which I do often.
Oh, very good. Good advice. Thank you. Yes, sir, Drew.
I was going to say that LinkedIn is key. Like someone just texted me, do you know someone at B&H to help with my AV? And I know a bunch of people. I looked at my LinkedIn. They weren't in my Outlook. Because normally when I meet people at an event, I immediately put them in my Outlook or whatever you use and put all their details and then go right to LinkedIn and say, let's link. And then you go from there. Because once you're in LinkedIn, you see them forever, where they move, where they go. That's their work thing. And so I just searched through. I was shocked they weren't in my Outlook. I couldn't remember her. I I went into LinkedIn. Oh, you know, 8 people in LinkedIn B&H, 8 people, and I just sent them a note, which was on their Gmail, which is even better if they change jobs.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
I
for that
think-
live demo.
Example.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Very good. Thank you.
To add to that, even though
Go
that
ahead. No,
shows you how important it is to keep something like LinkedIn up to date, where you're moving, your contact information. I think my work email and my Gmail is on LinkedIn in case I move, or in case the reason someone's contacting me isn't necessarily work related. Maybe they're like, I'm more comfortable contacting that Gmail. That seems very innocuous.
Mhm.
But yeah, keep it up to date for sure.
Good point. David, you want
Yeah,
to?
David Wiederman, Global Account Director with Omni Hotels and Resorts. I'm based here. So on the sales side of the business, most suppliers will have some type of contact tracking software, and it'll have everything shy of your DNA. You know, do you like to golf? Do you eat chocolate? Do you drink red wine?
Sure.
All that stuff. But I find that I like to keep notes in my Outlook. So the Outlook fields have all the usual stuff, your mobile number, your email address, etc. And then there's that notes field, and I will immediately put in the notes field March 30th, 2023, met at GMID, and then I'll make a couple of notes. Golfs, wears hats, game show jackets, whatever. Whatever I think is going to connect me with somebody the next time to say, I met you at GMID. You may recall, I don't make the assumption because, we're all busy professionals.
Right.
And one can run into another, as you said. But I think the most important thing is just to be a friend first. You don't want to come up and go, hi, I need, I want, I. You really want to, be approachable, say it's my first time at this meeting, or I'm really glad to be here. How about you? I mean, it's amazing if you relax and you're just friendly, how many people will want to connect you with other people just by being a friend first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else like to share? Any other questions for our roundtable guests? No? Yes, Brianna.
Question. I just want to say thanks first for speaking. But given that there's so much emphasis on the online presence now, we're talking a lot about LinkedIn. In your experience at networking events and being professionals now, do you find that the in-person meeting of someone is more impactful than the online? Because I know there's a lot of stress about build your online presence, but does it really ever overcome the impact of being in person? Or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Good question.
That's an excellent question. And I think people-to-people interaction, meeting up in person, like face-to-face, it's irreplaceable. And no matter what happens or no matter how advanced we get as a society, that will never lose its value. But there is definitely time and place for online presence as well, especially if you have a sales role or if you're in charge of your own business. That's how you reach out to your potential clientele, because everyone's online. That might be the first impression they have of you. And LinkedIn is crucial. And as was mentioned before, that's a really good way to keep track of who you've met and stay up to date with everything for people that you've already met in person. Kind of like how I approach other social medias. I usually don't add friends or followers unless I know them already as a colleague or a friend or someone, a coworker in person. But then it's just a quick way to stay in touch and like, oh, let's follow these articles, let's like this, let's comment or look for new opportunities. But yeah, I think they're both important, but they have their own purpose and their own place, if that makes any sense.
Zachary, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I disagree slightly. I prefer the digital networking side. And the reason being is that while I completely agree that there is no replacement for face-to-face meetings, events, networking, and all of that, those are valuable. They should never go away. What I appreciate about the digital networking side is that it takes a bit of the pressure off to be so on the spot. You have a chance to, if someone's introducing themselves, you have a chance to craft the perfect message back to them, especially if they're like a target of someone that you've always wanted to meet. And kind of likewise, if you're reaching out to someone kind of cold, it's much easier for me as an introvert. That's the third time I've mentioned it tonight. Maybe not so introverted. It gives me the chance to make sure that what I'm asking of them or saying of them or how I'm introducing myself is efficient and is succinct. So sometimes you will ramble in person because you're nervous. It's much harder to do that when you're typing out a message in a chat. Not impossible, but much harder. So I prefer that digital networking side, though I do appreciate the in-person and I don't think it should go away.
Thank you, Zachary.
Yeah.
Devin, would you like to add to that?
I agree with both. And I think it really depends on what industry, what you're fully looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
If your business is more of an online, you can work from home all the time and you don't have to be face-to-face with people, that may work better for you. For me personally, I'm a people person. I have to be on site. I work with people every day. I appreciate the in-person interaction more because I've had to throughout my career, yet know that there's people that do well and sometimes better online, and I think they both are important. It's just, how you, want
Your comfort zone.
exactly.
Your comfort zone.
And I'm sorry, I just want to say, like, if you do prefer to go the digital route, like through LinkedIn or an online networking, one reason, like, I don't accept LinkedIn requests from a lot of random people is because a lot of times it seems like a very generic message. So if you choose to do that, make sure you really know, like, who you're talking to and that your connection or your willingness to connect has a distinct purpose. And because that will make the difference as to whether you accept it or not. I'm like, who is this weirdo? Or, like, this is sent to hundreds of other people. It's like there's nothing personable. It's like a solicitation. So just be mindful of that if you do the digital route.
Good at it, yeah.
Well, we are approaching the conclusion. I would just like to add one more thing about personal and digital. So I've been in MPI a very long time. So this is my 41st year in MPI. Networking never gets old. Never. In fact, I'm going to share an example and embarrass Meredith here. Meredith sent me an email, but maybe a month ago. Oh, I would have embarrassed you if you were in the back too. It doesn't matter. But Meredith sent me an email about a month ago, maybe a little more. Hey, we're both in MPI. I don't think we've met. We should get together. But I'm an in-person person much more than a digital person, right? I'm old. I mean, I joined MPI as a student when I was in pre-K, but still, I'm still about 45 years old. But then Meredith was gracious enough to meet me in person. We had coffee. We got to know each other. We show up today. Hey, right? We've already built a network amongst us, and it never gets old. There are always new people processing through. So all the advice you heard today is really valuable, however you choose to make use of it. And I would like to, at this time, since we're coming to a close, thank the NYU Planning Committee, Brianna, Molly, and Haksien, who are all graduating this May, I may say. So Radio City has their name on it. And thank our panelists, Ingrid, Zachary, and Devin. And of course, MPI for the opportunity to be here today and speak with all of you. Are there any closing remarks before we go? Remember, you're the only thing between this group and a reception.
I hope to see you all at the next MPI event after
There you
this
go.
one.
All right. Perfect.
I will be looking for you specifically.
Always be closing.
That's right.
Right. And if you're not an MPI member, you should definitely sign up and get
There you
yourself
go.
a
All right,
mentor.
Zachary, any last words?
Enjoy your drinks.
Yeah.
There you go.
Enjoy your evening. Thank you all very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great job.
Always be closing,
Thank
David.
you, sir.
Thank you so much for attending. It was so good to see you.